extraordinarily expensive, and I've either had my family or I just don't want to pay that much to have in vitro fertilization part of my insurance, should I not have the right to buy it across state lines? But do you want the federal government coming into the states and regulating insurance companies? You probably don't. So you have to be careful how we go about opening up trade. But I think if you look at it as a trade issue, Supreme Court could rule on that in that fashion. Over against the wall.
Can you comment on kind of the hidden effects that this bill that they've got now will have on small community hospitals? My understanding is it's going to kill them.
On small hospitals?
Yeah. The financial effects that this bill will have on small hospitals is effectively very short period of time. That function to shut them down.
Right. Well, I think what happens is the more people you have in a public system, the more there's a squeeze for dollars. If you talk to people who have nursing homes and hospitals, you see that they're already squeezing fees and have been for years and years. So what makes no sense to me is how you're going to create a new program, an $800 billion program. It's not going to cost anything, it's not going to add to the debt, and it's not going to cause further pressure on the system. It makes no sense. There's already an automatic law that reduces physicians' fees by like 8 or 9% every year under Medicare. And every year for like the last 10 years, they have a big battle and they rescind that 8 or 9% in December usually. But I don't know how they're going to do it. There's just too much pressure on a system that, and then we have a deficit in our country of $1.75 trillion. So it just doesn't add up. And so I think, yes, there'll be more pressure on hospitals. It'll put more people out of business, more pressure. The other thing is there's a pressure on, we have 10% unemployment. And let's say that 17 employees, you have to get the insurance, 16 you don't. That means the 17th employee, there's a great disincentive to hire the 17th employee. So if you're the 17th person looking for a job in a small business, you don't get it. And sort of what Bastiat talked about, the seen and the unseen. We'll see everybody having insurance, but we won't see the guy or the man or woman who didn't get the job. It's like minimum wage. Everybody says, oh yes, we should have $10 minimum wage. Why not have $20 minimum wage? The problem is you see that, yeah, some people got their wages increased, but you don't see that the McDonald's that had 40 employees now is going to have 30 or now going to have 20. It creates unemployment. We get these humanitarian ideas, free health care for everyone, but we don't understand the consequences of making something free means that ultimately it's overused, there's too much money spent, there's not enough money, so then it has to be rationed. And that's what it leads to.
I'd like to make a statement to reinforce that. Up until recently, I lived in Western New York, Buffalo, Niagara Falls area, and when I went over to Canada briefly, I injured myself. It's not a rumor that if you are injured in Canada, you have to go to the hospitals there for even something as life-threatening as getting shot or stabbed. It's very easy for you to be stuck in the ambulance for up to 8 hours before you're even put into the hospital. My injury was minor, and I told them flat out I would take the time to go back across the border, have dinner, drop my friends off, before I go to a United States hospital, knowing I would be out of there before I would even be seen in Canada. If this health reform goes through, that would be the exact same thing here. Because everything will be overused. And we don't have the background, we don't have the infrastructure to handle it. We see it in other countries, why it is that the people are not raising their voices enough to get this overturned.
Right. There are companies in Michigan, private for-profit companies, that their whole job is to facilitate Canadians coming across the border to have the heart surgery. There's a guy on YouTube, you can look it up, that's got a kidney stone. They've got YouTube of him over like a month. He's going to the ER in Canada, and they just give him morphine or whatever to try to kill his pain, but they don't do anything about his kidney stones because he's waiting in line for lithotripsy or a urologist to go in there and get the stone. He'd be treated within a few days in our country, And I think the one thing that they don't realize, and the Democrats are going to get a whole lot of wind of, is Americans are a pretty independent breed. We all inherited it from a bunch of radicals who moved over here to get away from Europe. We're not going to be as docile, I think, as the Europeans, and like lemmings being led to slaughter. There's people down here. We want to get the health care way we want it. We want to make decisions with us and our doctor, and we're not going to be told. I think there's going to be a lot of unhappiness in our country that people won't put up with it.
I've heard your speeches a couple times, and I've heard you talk about a high deductible system. What legislation needs to be passed or repealed to get to that high deductible system? And if the current bill passes, are we going to be too far socialist to even get back to where we need to be?
Good question. Some of it's tax law. For example, there are only certain plans that can be sold under the approved Health Savings Act that came about a few years ago. Now, one good thing they did is it used to be you had to spend your money by the end of the year. And a lot of companies would have this, and you'd put money, and then all the money disappears if you don't spend it. Now it goes year to year. It's like all my kids are having braces, and so I put money in every month, but it rolls over, so I don't have to be careful about when I spend it. So that's been good. But most of it's tax law, and some of it is legislation expanding the use of health savings account to more and more people. But a lot of it's tax law and can be done through legislation. The second question is, will it be too late? I've been talking a lot in my speeches lately about a Reagan story, and Reagan tells his story about can you repeal a program once it's enacted, and he tells the story of it in England. They set up a civil service position in 1803, and they have a guy stand on the cliffs of Dover, and he was going to ring a bell when he saw Napoleon coming. They got rid of it finally in 1945. So it's hard to get rid of programs. It's easier to stop them than it is to bring those back. But I told that story not too long ago over in Louisville, and a woman who's the chairman of the party in Oldham County came up to me and she said, well, we've done it one time. And I had forgotten about this, but in 1988 they passed a catastrophic insurance bill that Kennedy got through, and we actually did repeal it within 6 months. You can't do it unless you take possession of at least one house, either the House or the Senate up there. But really you need a clean sweep. We need something like 1994 when we got both houses of the House and the Senate. Something that dramatic, we could repeal this. But that's what it's going to take. And I think we're going to have a good year. I don't know if it can be that big, but I hope it can be that big.